The girl who didn't belong. Have you ever looked in the mirror and seen a ghost staring back? Not a supernatural one, but the ghost of who you could have been if the people who were supposed to love you hadn't decided you were a mistake. My name is Lucy. For the first 18 years of my life, I was the ghost in my own family's perfect photograph, the blurry, unwanted figure at the edge of the frame. My younger sister, Sarah, was the sun around which our universe revolved. Golden hair, a smile that could sell toothpaste to a corpse, a natural grace that made everything she did seem effortless. She was my father's jewel, his perfect asset. And me? I was the factory defect. The braces that tangled my words, the thick glasses that magnified my insecurities, the cruel, relentless acne that painted a battlefield across my face. I wasn't just awkward. In the Martinez family, I was an aesthetic crime. Our father, Edward, was a self-made man who'd built a real estate empire on a foundation of ruthless ambition and flawless appearances. Our home was a showroom. Our lives were a carefully curated portfolio. And I was a bad investment. "Lucy, must you slouch?" my mother would sigh, her eyes sliding over me to rest adoringly on Sarah. "Sarah, darling, stand up straight so Daddy can see how lovely you look." The comparisons weren't subtle. They were a daily erosion of my soul. Dinner conversations were post-mortems of Sarah's social triumphs, while my straight-A report cards gathered dust, unremarked upon. My intelligence was irrelevant. My kindness was invisible. My very existence was an inconvenient smudge on their pristine image. The breaking point came the night of my high school graduation. I should have been celebrating. I'd earned valedictorian, a fact my parents had asked me not to mention at the ceremony because it might make Sarah's friends feel inadequate. As I passed my father's study, I heard his voice, low and confident on a business call. "Yes, Sarah is the family's crown jewel," he was saying, a note of pride that I'd never heard directed at me. Then a dismissive chuckle. "The older one, well, let's just say she didn't inherit the good genes. An ugly graduate doesn't exactly reflect well on the family brand, does it?" The words didn't just hurt, they crystallized. They turned the vague, aching feeling of not belonging into a cold, hard truth. I wasn't unloved because I was difficult. I was unwanted because I was ugly. I was a liability to the Martinez brand. The confrontation that followed wasn't a dramatic screaming match. It was worse. It was clinical. I stood in that opulent living room, my voice trembling as I repeated what I'd heard. My father didn't deny it. He simply looked at me with the cool appraisal of a man assessing a failing stock. "Eavesdropping is a vulgar habit," he stated, folding his newspaper. "But since you heard, let's be clear. Sarah has the presentation that opens doors in my world. You have a sharp mind, but that's a back-office tool. It doesn't bring in clients. It doesn't inspire confidence at galas. You simply don't factor into the future of this family." My mother, perched on the sofa, looked at her hands. She didn't say a word. Her silence was the final, suffocating blanket thrown over my childhood. That night, I packed a single suitcase. The house was tomb quiet. No one came to stop me. No one called after me. As I closed the heavy front door behind me, I didn't just leave a house. I was excommunicated. A month later, a distant cousin, pity in her eyes, told me they'd formally amended their will. Lucy Martinez had been legally erased. The Forge of Fury. For a year, I drowned. I worked 2 minimum-wage jobs, shared a cockroach-infested apartment with 3 strangers, and cried myself to sleep on a mattress on the floor. The grief was a physical weight, a constant nausea of abandonment. But one night, staring at a cracked ceiling, the grief ignited. It didn't burn hot and wild, it burned cold and focused, a blue flame of pure, undiluted fury. They thought I was worthless? Fine. I would build my own worth. They thought my face was my only currency? I would make my mind a fortress. Revenge became my oxygen, not the petty, screaming kind, the kind that is built brick by silent brick. I used my valedictorian brain to get a full-ride scholarship to business school. I waited tables by day, studied by night. The acne cleared, not with expensive treatments, but with time and a diet of ramen noodles and determination. I swapped my glasses for contacts, not to be pretty, but to see the world and my path through it more clearly. I ran until my lungs burned, transforming my awkward body into one of strength and endurance. The most profound change, however, was inside. The need for their approval died. In its place grew a steely, unshakable core of self-reliance. I stopped seeing myself through their dismissive eyes. I was no longer the ugly sister. I was Lucy Martinez, survivor, architect of her own destiny. I founded Altus Consultants 5 years later, a financial strategy firm. My specialty? Identifying weaknesses in over-leveraged companies. I was exceptionally good at it, perhaps because I'd grown up studying the greatest facade of all, my own family. I built a reputation for ruthless efficiency and icy precision. And yes, I took a certain dark satisfaction in advising several of my father's most aggressive competitors. I never directly targeted him. I didn't have to. Watching his empire struggle from the sidelines, knowing my mind was helping to chip away at its foundations, was a quiet, nourishing poison. The gilded invitation. When the wedding invitation arrived at my sleek downtown office, it felt like a historical artifact from a dead civilization. Heavy cardstock, embossed gold foil. Mr. and Mrs. Edward Martinez request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Sarah, to Michael Fuentes. Michael Fuentes, son of Frank Fuentes, a real estate titan who made my father look like a corner shop merchant. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a merger, the ultimate business transaction with Sarah as the blushing commodity. For a week, I left the invitation on my desk, a white rectangle of psychic disturbance. Why? After a decade of silence, why now? Was it a peace offering, a clumsy attempt to clear their conscience, or, more likely, a calculated move to present the perfect unified family to their powerful new in-laws? The old Lucy, the ghost girl, would have torn it up or cried or hidden. The woman I had forged in fire felt a new emotion settle over the fury: cold, surgical curiosity, and the desire for a reckoning. I would go, but not as a supplicant, not as the forgiven black sheep. I would go as a living, breathing consequence. The grand entrance. The wedding was held at the city's most obscenely luxurious hotel, a cathedral of wealth. I wore crimson, a dress that spoke of power, not prettiness. It clung to the curves I earned, not inherited. My jewelry was minimalist platinum. My hair was swept up, revealing a face that was now all sharp angles and calculated confidence. The last traces of the ugly duckling had been incinerated in the forge of my ambition. I entered the reception hall after the ceremony. The air was thick with perfume, money, and false bonhomie. I saw them immediately. My father, hair silvered but posture still rigid with authority, holding court. My mother, a delicate, anxious bird in designer silk. And Sarah, a vision in layers of white lace, laughing with a practiced tinkling sound. She was the masterpiece. I was the ghost made flesh. I moved through the crowd like a shark through warm water. A murmur followed me. Who was that? I saw the confused glances, the appreciative stares from men, the wary appraisal from women. I was an unidentified asset in their closed ecosystem. Then I arrived at the sweetheart table. Sarah was leaning into Michael, her new husband, handsome, open-faced, the picture of privileged sincerity. Her laughter died in her throat when she saw me. Her eyes, the same shade as mine but always so much more celebrated, widened in pure, unvarnished shock. Lucy? The name escaped her lips like a secret she'd sworn never to tell. Michael, sensing the seismic shift, looked between us. "Do you know her?" he asked, his voice warm with friendly confusion. I let the silence hang for a beat, a lifetime of exile condensed in a second. I met my sister's petrified gaze, then turned a flawless, polished smile on her husband. "More than you think," I said, my voice clear and carrying. "I'm her older sister." The three words landed like a detonation in silent space. Michael's affable expression shattered into confusion. "Sister? Sarah, you never mentioned a sister." The perfect porcelain face of Sarah cracked. Panic flashed in her eyes. Before she could fabricate an answer, my parents materialized as if summoned by the family distress beacon. My father's politician's smile was glued in place, but it didn't reach his eyes, which held a storm of panic and calculation. "Lucy," he boomed, a performance of paternal delight. "What a wonderful surprise. We weren't sure you'd make it." He reached out, not for a hug, but to steer me away, his grip on my elbow firm and controlling. I didn't budge. I wouldn't miss my only sister's wedding. Family is everything. "Isn't that what you always taught us, Dad?" The muscle in his jaw ticked. My mother performed a stiff air kiss near my cheek. "You look different," she breathed, her eyes doing a frantic inventory of my transformation. The unspoken words hung in the air. "You look acceptable." The conversation was a masterclass in subtext, a minefield of old wounds disguised as pleasantries. I saw Michael trying to parse the strange, frigid energy. I saw Sarah shrinking, her wedding day glow dimming under the glare of this resurrected past. I saw my father's mind racing, trying to categorize me as a threat to be managed. The victory was instant, and it was immense, but it was only the opening move. The unmasking. I spent the next hour as a ghost at the feast. I sipped champagne, observed, and let them stew. I saw my father ushering important guests away before they could interact with me. I saw Sarah's brittle, strained smiles. The poison of my presence was seeping into their perfect day. The crucial encounter came when Michael, genuine concern cutting through the social fog, found me alone. "Lucy," he said, lowering his voice, "what's going on? There's a story here, and I feel like I just married into the second act." He was a good man. It was almost a pity. "The story, Michael," I said, holding his gaze, "is that 10 years ago, I was disinherited and cast out of this family because I had braces, acne, and glasses. Because my father decided I was the ugly graduate who tarnished the family brand. Sarah was the presentable asset. I was written out of the will like a bad debt." His face paled. "That's monstrous. That can't be true. Ask Sarah why she never spoke of me. Ask my father why his business partners were warned not to hire me in this city. The humiliation wasn't an emotional outburst, Michael. It was a corporate restructuring, and I was deemed redundant." I saw the foundation of his new reality crack. He loved Sarah, but he was a Fuentes. He understood business, legacy, and cold calculation. What I described was a cruelty of a different, more calculating order. As we spoke, I noticed a man watching us, sharp, observant, with an intelligence that mirrored my own. He introduced himself later as Gabriel Vega, Michael's business partner and, as I'd learn, a man with his own deep grievances against Edward Martinez. But the true coup came during the father of the bride speech. My father took the microphone, radiating patriarchal pride. He spoke of Sarah's beauty, her grace, his profound joy. He spoke of family values with a straight face. Then Frank Fuentes, Michael's father, stood up, was a lion where my father was a fox. His voice silenced the room. "Tonight has been illuminating," he began, his eyes finding mine across the crowd. "It seems the Martinez family has been hiding its most impressive asset." He raised his glass to me. To Lucy Martinez of Altus Consultants, your work restructuring the Torres-Mendoza merger was a masterclass. I look forward to discussing how that brilliant mind can benefit Fuentes Corporation. The silence was absolute, then erupted into applause. The look on my father's face was the single most satisfying image of my life. It wasn't just shock, it was the dawning horror of strategic defeat. The ugly graduate was not only in the room, she had just been publicly anointed by a kingmaker he was desperate to impress. His rejection of me was now exposed as not just cruel, but catastrophically stupid. The aftermath and the ascendancy. What followed was a cascade of consequences I had set in motion, but could not fully control. Michael, reeling, confronted Sarah. In her panic and guilt, she confessed not only to my exile, but to a fresh betrayal. Our father had pressured her to extract confidential Fuentes business strategies from her new husband. The perfect daughter, in her zeal to please daddy, had become an industrial spy on her wedding night. Frank Fuentes, upon learning this, was ready to unleash legal hell, which would have annihilated Martinez investments. My father, faced with this existential threat and the seismic shock of my reemergence, suffered a heart attack. This was the moment, the pinnacle of revenge. I could have walked away, let the empire that exiled me crumble, but standing in that sterile hospital room, looking at the diminished, frightened man in the bed, I realized my fury had run its course. It had built me, but it didn't have to define me. True power wasn't in watching him burn. It was in holding the torch and choosing not to light the pyre. I brokered a deal, a complex three-way merger between Altus, Martinez Investments, and Fuentes Corporation. It saved my father's company from ruin, but on my terms. It gave Frank Fuentes a strategic victory without a messy lawsuit. And it positioned me, Lucy Martinez, as the essential architect and equal partner in a new, powerful entity. My father, in his hospital bed, finally voiced the regrets he should have uttered a decade earlier. It changed nothing about the past, but it allowed for a future, one I now dictated. Not revenge, but rebirth. Today, I am not the ghost. I am the cornerstone. My relationship with my family is a delicate, complicated bridge we are building over a canyon of pain. Some days it feels strong, others it trembles, but it exists because I chose to build it. Sarah and Michael are in counseling, fighting for their marriage with an honesty that was once foreign to her. My father consults. My mother tries haltingly to know the woman I am, and I sit at the head of a boardroom table that rivals my father's old one. I am Lucy Martinez, CEO, the ugly graduate whose mind built an empire more resilient and more respected than the one that rejected her. The revenge was never in their destruction. It was in my unshakable creation. It was in walking into that wedding, not with a scream, but with a silence that spoke volumes. It was in the moment Michael asked, "Do you know her?" And I could truthfully answer, "More than you think." I knew the cost of their cruelty. I knew the weight of their judgment. And I knew, finally, that my worth was never theirs to assign. The greatest revenge is a life lived magnificently, audaciously, and free. And that I have claimed as my own. If this story of transformation, from rejected ghost to unshakable queen of your own life, resonated with you, then you understand that some fires don't destroy, they forge. Don't just listen. Subscribe to Clara's Revenge. Hit that notification bell because every week we dive into the heart of betrayal and return with blueprints for building something unbreakable. Your support fuels these stories of ultimate vindication. Subscribe now and join a community that knows the sweetest justice is a life lived on your own triumphant terms.